What really is going to make you unique sometimes is the way your brain works differently than anyone's brain who's ever existed on the planet. That's valuable right there. Write down what comes out of the brain, because you
capture those things.
Yes,
because
capture
if you
them.
don't capture them, they will slip away.
And sometimes the idea isn't good until the second half arrives later, right? So idea number 1's in your book from 5 years ago. Idea number 2 that finally completes that idea arrives later. I mean, I had a friend who was so creative, and he said he gets the best ideas at night. So he just turns on the light at the side of the table, writes it down in the book, and by morning there's another idea down there.
Yeah.
And quantity has a quality all its own, and sometimes a book filled with interesting ideas out of your individual unique head will help you later on. So write them down.
Yeah, you have
There's no
to.
downside.
I have an app on my phone where I can just, the Notes app. You ever use that?
Sure,
where
sure.
it has a little microphone.
It's filled with
I
stuff.
talk into that thing.
I do too.
And it dictates it really almost perfectly. So I'll have an idea and I'll just be driving down the road. I just press that button. I start talking into it and then I put it down. I got it. Like I got that one. I captured it.
Think about people who had one fantastic idea in their life and built their whole life on it.
Yeah.
And you never know which idea that's going to be. And you know what? I was an improv. Again, you know more about this than I do, but I was a theater major for my first 2 years of college, and we did improv comedy. And the guy who taught us improv in high school, really, he had a great line. He said, that part of your brain, like every part of your brain, is a muscle. And he said, the more you're thinking, okay, I got a show this Friday that I have to come up with something funny for, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
And you start looking, your brain starts looking at things and finding things. So you're almost like training it to help you now in this new endeavor. It's a very plastic sort of an approach, but it's the same thing with the ideas. One idea in your little book that you wrote down could make your life, your child. I mean, if you're Henry Ford, I mean, how many people did you employ for decades afterwards because of a good idea? I mean, our world is built on those things.
And also, like, the idea of having these ideas and the enthusiasm that comes from it, like, it starts to escalate and you start to calculate, like, oh, and I need more, and I need this, and maybe that, and then the motivation and the momentum of these ideas can lead to enthusiasm.
And you attract other people who can add. And I mean, this is what we said about, like, you start your website and you just do it. Because things, once you push the verb of living manages to create ripples in, get a little metaphysical here, but ripples in time in front of you that open up possibilities. And because someone may, if you only have one podcast listener, but that podcast listener is like, wow, that's great, I'm gonna, and gets a hold of you, and your life goes off in another different direction. But you have to try. You have to try.
Yeah, here's a better one. Pretend there's a documentary crew filming your success story, and they're following you around right now. What would you do? What would you do if you knew that there was a crew following you around with cameras documenting your future incredible success, and they want to catch you in the act of it all? You would do all the right things you would have to do. Think about that, organize it. But we are saddled down by so many doubts and so much just mental horseshit that keeps people from action.
But look at the thing that's, to me, maybe the number one thing that's the impediment and that makes society unequal. It's the luck of who your parents are.
That's a big one.
I mean, if you say, listen, this guy grew up and started his own business because his folks taught him those kinds of things and encouraged him when his or she with her creativity. Okay, that's a person that's got a huge advantage in life. We talked about white privilege giving you an advantage. Well, good parent privilege gives you an advantage.
Giant.
But then the question that, as if you're looking at it macro in a society sense, that comes up is, okay, what can society do if you say this is a real problem for the rest of us, not enough good parents because those people never learned it? How do you compensate for that? And that almost gets a little socialistic, where you talk about the state teaching you creativity, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But there's got to be, if we decide that this is a national security interest, having more Americans live in the dream,
have less losers.
But what if your parents are losers?
Yeah, well, you can get past that. I know a lot of people that have had losers for parents.
Could we increase the number of people? If you say, okay, 500 out of 1,000 overcome that, how do you get to 600? How do you get to 700 out of 1,000? And if you say it's a national security concern that we do, I think ambition is a gene. I really do. And I think that some of us, you could be born into any circumstance, but you've got this gene, so you're going to be ambitious and you're going to overcome it. Then I think there's people who have no ambition gene and there's nothing you can do to help them. And then I think there's a huge number of people in the middle that could go either way. And the question I have is, you don't have to help the ones with the gene. You can't do anything for the ones without the gene. How do you increase the odds for the people who could go either way?
I think you give them a template. You give them some markers that they can follow.
Who's we though? I mean, they're
you.
Me. Yes, yes. Okay.
Anybody who's already gone. Anybody who's ahead. You go, hey, come this way. I mean, there's a responsibility that we have for each other.
Well, what about like incubating
community.
businesses? I mean, you look at some of these in the little town Eugene, Oregon, where I live now. They have
I love Eugene, by the way.
It's great. If you're from Los Angeles like I am, it's
great.
Green. I like Boulder, where you lived. I went to college there. But if you are living in a place like that, they have a venture capitalist angel investor thing for people who are starting small businesses, and it's not a government deal, although the county's in, I think, a little bit. But it's one of those things where you go, okay, if this is a good idea, could we be doing more of this? Where you say, Joe Blow wants to start a business, he needs $100,000 to do it. If you go to a bank, they're never going to approve it because you have too much credit card debt. Could we as a society say, hey, we have an interest in Joe Blow doing well with that furniture company. What can we do to help?
I think even
pie
better,
in the sky.
The better thing would be to not have a loan. To try to figure out how to do it without a loan. And
I
one of the
agree with
beautiful
that.
things about Kickstarter and GoFundMe is that you could raise money now.
And you
with
don't need a
things.
storefront?
No, you don't need anything.
No.
I just feel like people need inspiration and they need guidelines. And if as long as you could just start moving, just get action, like just movement, get something.
That's what I said.
Going.
Verb. You got it.
Yeah.
And folks, listen. That's the one thing to really take out of this is that just try and see what happens. And my stepfather had a great line. He said, "What's the worst that can happen?"
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to think about that to realize if you're scared about failure, don't be scared about the greatest in the world have failed. If you're worried about going into debt, I understand that.
Don't be scared of failure. I think failure is awesome for you. And that's one of the reasons why, like I said, I like doing things that I suck at. You could get real complacent if you're really good at something and you only do that thing all the time.
I agree with that. And you're not growing anymore.
Yeah, you're just not challenged. You're not at the bottom of the heap. If you start jiu-jitsu right now and you're a white belt, you're like, oh God, what the fuck? How could I ever get good at this? And it's humbling. But in that humbling thing, you learn about yourself, you learn about discipline, and you build up that engine, that muscle that is trying to work things out and figure things out.
Creating a more formidable you.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it.